Bienvenidos al vídeo podcast de la Cátedra Internacional en Inteligencia Artificial Generativa, Retos y Riesgos. Un trabajo conjunto de la Universidad CEU San Pablo, Deloitte y Odisea. Conoce aquí a los mayores expertos en IA generativa.
Oh, it's great to be here, Frank. I love your work. You have great mojo, my friend.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Okay, so Matthew, this wasn't going to be one of the questions for this interview. However, you know, having witnessed what we have witnessed so far in the last 48 hours, 72 hours, we have to talk about DeepSeek and what is all of this disruption and all this hype and all this noise. Tell us about DeepSeek. What is different from what it was with, for example, OpenAI's ChatGPT 2 years ago?
Okay. Yeah. So we're still trying to discover what's going on, but this is what we've uncovered so far. That there's a company in Hong Kong that have basically created an equivalent to ChatGPT's O1 model, which is starting to show reasoning, and it only cost about $6 to $7 million to train that model. Now, the cost of training something like ChatGPT or Claude or Grok normally, Frank, is $100 million. Wow. The energy required it could power 700,000 homes for 1 year. Wow. And yet DeepSeek has been trained on a much smaller model that only costs $6 to $7 million to train, and yet it's already showing the same capabilities as ChatGPT's O1 by being able to reason. This is remarkable. It's cheaper, and the model is much lighter, which means it's more cost efficient and energy efficient to train that artificial intelligence model. If it's true, it will blow the industry wide open with this new model.
Understood. I mean, what could argue, of course, that for example, the users in this case are using GPUs by NVIDIA in this case. So
that's right. Yep.
Exactly. So they're kind of making the case of, well, it's not that simple. It's not that. It's an oversimplification just to say, well, it is much cheaper and so forth. What do you say to that, Matthew?
Yes. So basically what we found out is they had older NVIDIA AI GPUs that had been in storage for a while. And then they used other types of AI chips that are nowhere near as powerful as the latest things like Blackwell that's come out of NVIDIA, right? The latest AI GPU. And so effectively what they've done is kind of put together kind of a hodgepodge of like data servers of old technologies and been able to train an artificial intelligence large language model that is as performant as the most powerful large language model we have today from people like OpenAI and Claude, who spend billions on their data centers. These guys only spent like 6 million. And it's like, what on earth have they done? That's remarkable.
It is remarkable indeed. So what about this, what we're hearing? Well, it's actually the truth. They are actually open source.
That's correct.
For those who are not familiar with, well, it is a closed system and it is open source. Explain to them what is the advantage of DeepSeek in this case.
Yeah, so Meta have gone down what we call the open source type of foundation. So what does that mean? So what it means is the algorithms and the model is available to the general public under a user license, a free user license. So they can access the model and use the model, and they can train that model or actually build new mathematics into the model. So open source is about bringing it into the public domain for public adoption, public critique and assessment, and basically it's the open source is kind of the way that the software industry is going, actually, Frank, where we basically make it open to the general public. Now, a closed system like who will be closed? Claude, more or less. Chat GPT is now closed. Yeah. So effectively what that means is you have to buy it from the company or buy the services from the company, which costs you a lot of money, right, in order to provide large language model services. But open source, it's free for everybody to use. And so you can just go and have fun with it. So what we're seeing is that open source is the kind of it's where the AI industry says this is the best place to go. And we saw open source successful with Unix, but went to Linux, right? Yes. And you know, companies were built on open source software that were worth billions of dollars, like Red Hat and others, right? So open source means it's open to the general community to innovate, and I think that's the right way to go. Now, OpenAI was meant to be open source when Elon invested his $50 million, but Sam Altman, in partnership with Microsoft, have turned OpenAI's models into a closed system, not an open system. Because it's all about the dollars, right? It's all about the dollars.
It's about the ROI. That's right. Exactly. Well, and these could be a coincidence, I guess. But I remember back in the days when you and I met the first time, that you had been a consultant for the U.S. government. I remember some years ago.
I'd advise
an advisor. Yes.
Yeah.
So is this a coincidence that this is just being released after the public display of what is going to be the Stargate project?
Yeah, we can talk about Stargate. Of course, Of course,
it is a coincidence. Okay.
Of course, it's a coincidence. Of course.
Oh dear.
I mean, Project Stargate, that actually started with Microsoft and OpenAI a few years ago. They announced that actually, and it was going to be about I think it was about $100 billion or something like that. And now, obviously, under the Trump administration, investors from Oracle and SoftBank and a few others have come in and said, right, let's go from 100 billion into 500 billion in order to move these large language models into what they hope is artificial general intelligence, where AI starts to develop higher human capabilities like reasoning, goal setting, knowledge transfer learning, maybe an understanding of emotional intelligence, a new form of cognition. But personally, I think that AGI through large language models won't be achieved. We need cognitive science, new mathematics in order to develop those, if you like, those higher brain functions, those higher capabilities in AI. And Jan LeCun from Meta agrees with me on this. So the announcement Stargate is about building huge data centers that cost a huge amount of money. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars with power plants right next to them that are providing all the energy they need in order to scale large language models from where they are today, narrow AI, hopefully to get to artificial general intelligence.
Will the game change, you would say?
What, with DeepSeek?
Yes.
I'll bet your bottom dollar the intelligence agencies are all over this announcement. I'll tell you,
absolutely.
I'll tell you.
Indeed.
I suspect there's a bit of smoke and mirrors here. And the reason being is Google DeepMind, the guys based in the UK, are probably number one in the world when it comes to artificial intelligence. They've always been at the edge, right?
Yes.
And they've been looking at reducing the size of these large language models with less weights, less measures, less smaller neural networks. Okay, they've been looking at that, and I would have suspected that they would have cracked this actually if it was possible. So what I suspect, Frankie, is a bit of smoke and mirrors, but it may well be they've come up with a new transformer model for large language models, DeepSeek, that has a lower software footprint, requires less power, less memory, but actually is more performant as a node of kind of like the brain operates. So in neural networks. So they may have a brand new approach to large language models, Frank, around this transformer model. And if that's the case, it changes everything.
So we shall see then. Okay.
We shall see. Yeah, on verra,
Indeed.
as I say.
Well, that we had to start this. We had to start this interview asking these questions because it is out there and it is going to be out there for some time. So back to the beginning. I remember also a few years ago when we met online that you had published a book when AI ethics was a sort of it was a sideline concept somehow. We agree on that. And AI ethics started just making some noise in the same way that Odyssea, for example, started functioning at the end of 2019, right before the pandemic. It was exactly the same thing. It was barely just making noise out there. However, is no longer the case, and AI ethics is really out there, and it's something that is essential. So your book, I remember, Inventing World 3.0, Evolutionary Ethics for Artificial Intelligence, is it's going to be one of those foundational works on this field. Basically, I have to say that. So basically, your book introduced this concept of World 3.0. Can you elaborate on how this vision from our current world, even with all these disruptions, and what key elements make it a more ethical and flourishing reality for both humans and AI?
Yeah, thanks for that. And don't forget, NASA have cited one of the inventions from that book. They ran a workshop experimenting with one of the inventions from that book. So humanity has to ask two questions. One is, who are we and where are we heading as a species on the planet? And then the second question is, how does artificial intelligence fit into that narrative, if you like, our paradise plan for life on our planet? How does AI fit into our paradise plan? And no nation has created a paradise plan yet for itself and artificial intelligence. We're seeing a lot of legislation, a lot of policy, a lot of law, but really we need to understand, who are we as a human species and what is it all about? And where do we want to go? We have to ask those questions first. And so the reason why I talked to World 1.0, World 2.0 and World 3.0 is that we're on a journey. And without artificial intelligence, we're kind of in World 1.0, where we got these digital systems, and we have these huge challenges on our planet, right? We have these huge challenges, right? Around water security, everybody having a job, food security, housing, all these different challenges we have. And also with our environment as well. And so World 1.0 is kind of humanity that doesn't have artificial intelligence. And when we look at World 2.0, which is today, it's kind of, well, we're developing artificial intelligence. So what is it in the human story? What is artificial intelligence going to do to help us to solve some of these huge problems that we're facing at a global level and a local level, right? And so World 2.0 is a choice point to either put ethics into artificial intelligence and move into an ethical society in World 3.0, or we don't put ethics in and we actually go back to the chaos of World 1.0, where AI is just not doing anything effective at all. It's making things worse because we don't have ethics. So where we're at today is World 2.0, and we have a choice whether we descend and go back into kind of the chaos of what we've inherited, or where we move into a new world of abundance, where we're enlightened, we have a paradise plan, we understand the importance of ethics, and we basically incorporate artificial intelligence with ethics so that it becomes an ethical partner to move us from these systems that are basically putting chaos on humanity into new systems of abundance, where we're in a new freedom. We've restored harmony to our planet. We've solved some of the global problems. We're actually moving into a new era of magnificence as a species, with AI as a partner, and humanity is liberated.
The term evolutionary ethics for artificial intelligence, which of course is central to your work, and let's call it a new philosophy somehow. It is a new philosophy then. Okay,
so philosophy.
How does how does this new philosophy go beyond Asimov's laws? Asimov's laws, they were more philosophical trappings than actual. Exactly, they were more that exactly. So how does it go beyond Asimov's laws, and what makes it more suitable for the complex AI landscape we're facing today?
Yeah, so Asimov's three basic laws are a great starting point, but they have no granularity. They have no depth to them, right? So artificial intelligence should do no harm to a human. That makes sense. But there are many, 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 many situations where doing something that might feel painful to the human will improve its overall well-being in the future, right? So
Indeed.
so for example, if a car crashes off a bridge and an AI, if you like, a robot goes into the water, and he has to basically either cut off the arm of an individual, right, in order for them to be saved, it's doing harm, but actually doing the greater good, right? And then the person can have a robotic arm, and I guess we're all good. But or we'll grow something in a petri dish, I guess, or an arm in a petri dish, kind of cloning. So humanity itself is, if we look at its history and we look at its development, it's been on an evolutionary journey, right? It's been on a biological evolutionary journey in terms of going from, if you like, the primordial soup, Frank, into Homo sapiens today. But we've also been in a mindset evolutionary journey where we've actually started to understand more of the world. We started to understand more of the cosmos. We've started to understand biology more. We've actually started to kind of develop, if you like, our understanding of reality itself, okay? And that hasn't finished. So our mind has been on an evolutionary journey itself. And the nature of humanity is to continue to evolve in both body, mind, and spirit. So that's why evolution is so important. And so that's why evolutionary ethics for artificial intelligence has to be aligned with that evolutionary journey. So, for example, we might want to say something like artificial intelligence will support regenerative and sustainable agriculture, right? Ancient traditions, right, that actually make sure the soil's good, the bacteria's good, the food's good, and then we're good, right? We might say something like artificial intelligence shall protect the culture and the sovereignty of the individual. So we're no longer being manipulated by systems around us. Our mind remains free, and also our choices remain free to thrive in body, mind, and spirit. And so when we look at Asimov's laws, they're great as foundational laws. But when we look at the intricacy of humanity itself, there are many, many, many different aspects to our, if you like, expression of being human that artificial intelligence needs to cater for. And so evolutionary ethics allows us to define at a it allows us to define all the areas where artificial intelligence needs to assist humanity to thrive at an individual level, the family to thrive, our communities to thrive, our nations to thrive, our world to thrive, and also how it can assist us to keep on growing and not dumb us down, right? So, and one of the beautiful things about artificial intelligence is it's a mirror back to us, right? It doesn't know who humanity is. It doesn't know our paradise plan. It doesn't know what ethics and morals are. And so we're learning to actually, that reflection back to us is teaching us to go inwards and actually start to understand who we truly are as a species, right? And then we can start to put benevolence and evolutionary ethics into AI, so it's working with where we're going into our future. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. That's why we need ethical AI and not responsible AI.
Big difference.
There's a huge difference.
Right. It is quite a difference that you don't get to hear in town. Okay.
Right. No.
Indeed. So NASA, in this case, we're going to talk about NASA here a bit because it has been reported NASA used the codes for ethical AI from your book, actually, and because the just past U.S. elections in which, Elon in this case was basically celebrating, just saying, "Oh, we're going to Mars." Okay.
Right.
And then, of course, it has to do with space exploration. And that's my question right now is could you share some insights into how these principles that NASA has been using from your book, in this case, might be applied in space exploration, and what implications this has for AI development here on Earth?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I can't share everything, but I can share a little bit, right?
Of course.
So this is where we get into something called ethical genetics.
Wow.
Ethical digital genetics, right? So when you and I and every person listening has 3 billion base pairs of DNA, right? And that DNA contains codes and instructions to create Frank and to create Matthew. Now, within there will be 12 to 16 base pairs that will define your eyes. So Frank has eyes and Matthew has eyes, but those eyes are different sizes, different colors. And so there's a uniqueness to the design of eyes based on genetics, right?
Yes.
So when we look at ethical digital genetics and the culture of the individual and the culture of societies, then what we can do is we can basically say, hey, listen, everybody wants to have a principle, say, of magnificence, but the way you express it and the way I express it may be subtly different. And so ethical digital genetics, which is evolutionary mathematics, basically puts magnificence in Matthew and magnificence in Frank, right? Yes. But it expresses itself slightly differently, right? And so we need ethical digital genetics in artificial intelligence for it to understand the individual perfectly, but recognizing there are many common themes within the individual, right?
Yes.
Are you with me so far? I haven't gone too far about. Right. Okay. So when NASA did this experiment, and I think it's in the public report they put out, I introduced them to ethical genetics, digital genetics, and they looked at areas such as the data ownership, the ethics of data, right? Data sovereignty, data ownership, data permission, all data rights, all sorts of ethical data, right?
Yes.
And we looked at things like the algorithm, the origins of the algorithm. Is it ethical? Do you have permission? How much is it being tested? You know, there's various aspects of ethical digital genetics that allow us to build an ethical genome for artificial intelligence, right?
Indeed.
So if we bring in ethics around data or the model or around the environment or around business or around commerce or around culture or around spirituality or around jobs or around whatever topic you want to do, it has a genome associated with it. And so the principles that NASA are using basically will be overarching principles, such as something like we want to be magnificent in space exploration, right? But how they do that will be very different to how SpaceX do it, or how Blue Origin do it, or how another space company does it, right? Same principle, but their execution is different.
It's different, right?
Understood. That makes sense.
Absolutely.
Right. I haven't been asked this for such a long time. I'm trying to remember it all.
That means the questions are well done. Okay. So your book has received praise from diverse figures, actually, including Foster Gamble from the Thrive Movement and Kathleen Barthay-Walcott from Intel. How do you see ideas bridging the gap between different sectors like technology, academia, and social movements? I gotta step in here because I have been trying to develop my own concept called omnivergence. In this case, it has to do with a paper, a publication of papers from diverse sectors and fields, and how they feed back into each other. Trying to develop that for a couple of years now. 4 years, actually.
I love it. I think that's awesome.
I'll keep you in the loop with that. Not now because we don't have time. But how do you see these ideas bridging the gap from different sectors?
So you've identified beautifully there are gaps to bridge in humanity in order for collaboration to truly occur, Frank. And we've seen different polarized views And the real leaders of tomorrow will have the gift of diplomacy, and they will be able to unite the left and the right, the one and the zero. They will be able to unite the common ground, the bridge you're talking about.
Yes.
Those folks are the leaders of tomorrow. And so when academia comes to the table, or big tech, or whoever, philosophers, it doesn't matter who it is. The key thing is to find the common ground, because no one is absolutely right, but we hold bits of truth that it's like a jigsaw, that when we put them together, we have a complete piece and then move forward together. The problem with academia is that, or the challenge with academia, and, you know, I've been a visiting scholar to NASA and taught at Cambridge University, is that they don't really have real world experience of software development. They have no product experience. They've never built a business, and they're brilliant at research, but not real world experience. Okay. So they bring this genius of research, but the businesses know about the real world, right? And the philosophers understand the people. And so we have to bring these people together, Frank, in an what did you call it? Omniverse?
Omnivergence.
That is the future, right? We have to bring people together. And academia is doing some remarkable stuff. They're looking at, is it possible to develop moral and ethical algorithms, right? Is it possible for large language models to have a moral mathematical infrastructure, right?
Wow.
And I wrote to them and said, look at ethical digital genetics, because I'll give you the answer.
Indeed.
But, you know, there's a lot of not invented here in academia. There's a lot of, they're a bit ivory tower, Frank, at times.
Indeed. It takes me, that what you just said, it brings me to back in the 70s, this book, Upwingers, by Esfandiari, FM 2030. Basically, that Upwingers, that book, that it was about bridging the left and the right and so forth.
Yeah.
Matthew, in your view, what are the most critical steps that governments, businesses, and individuals need to take in the next, say, 5 years to move forward towards the World 3.0 vision you've outlined in your book?
That's a great question. Step number one, develop a paradise plan. That's step number one. Understand who you are as a human collective. How do you define space-time reality? What are the ethics and morals that are basically governing that, right? So for the US, you have the different founding documents, from the Constitution to the Federalist Papers to the Declaration of Independence and all that stuff, right? Understand who you are and what's your paradise plan? Where are you heading as a human collective, and where does AI fit in order for you to leap into that future, right? Step number one. Step number two, ethics for artificial intelligence is imperative. If we look at the human intelligence, how it's developed cultures around the world, ethics do drive our worldview. Ethics drive how we understand the world and the nature of reality. Ethics are within every single person, whether they're brilliant or whether they're not so brilliant, right?
Indeed.
Human intelligence functions on ethics, and so artificial intelligence must function on ethics fundamentally. So ethical AI governance, I think we need digital citizen tests for artificial intelligence to ensure that its ethical quality complies with the narrative of governments or businesses, right? It fits within their borders. We need to have certification of ethical artificial intelligence so the general public can trust that artificial truly is ethical. And then my last point, even though we can go into innovation ecosystems and all sorts of different areas, the last point is the most critical point of all, Frank. The general public must have a voice in artificial intelligence. It is imperative that people have a voice in artificial intelligence.
And that fourth point is you made is quite important for Odyssey in this case, because Odyssey, as you know, is the union in Spanish of the Odyssey in this case, and AI backwards, the acronym for AI, IA in this case.
Love it.
We're in a journey right now. It's quite a voyage actually. And it is very important for us at Odyssey because we have contributed in conjunction with Deloitte, that was 15 months ago. We developed what it is called now the sandbox for regulation here in Spain specifically, in which companies are going to go basically and test their algorithms to make sure they comply with a certain, ethics, as you call it. It could be better. It would be better, of course.
And so that's perfect. I love that, because what that allows us to do is incubate our ethical artificial intelligence. It allows us to then basically, it has to pass a certification process, right? Which is really important for it to be in the public domain. So you're now developing trust, like the British kite mark. And I've written all about this. But also you're moving from machine chaos into machine order, because you're using governance to release trusted models into Spain, right?
Right.
So effectively, you're now moving from machine chaos into machine order. What that means is ethical artificial intelligence is aligning with the quality of the Spanish culture, the quality of the Spanish traditions, right? You're actually embodying the Spanish essence, if you will, into the sandbox, and that's the right thing to do.
Exactly.